when I was telling my son about this interview that I'm going to have, and I was super excited. I was telling him, I'm going to interview India's #1 NLP trainer. He said, "What is NLP?" I said, "It's Neuro-Linguistic Programming." He said, "Is it about coding?" So let me ask you that child's question.
So NLP is a subjective experience. So if I have to give you, there's no single definition of neuro-linguistic programming. I used to be fascinated by my dad's dad, about the books that he used to have. And a lot of collection was encyclopedia and history books. So as a child, I was very curious about history and world history. So next year is 50th year of NLP. So we're celebrating 50th year of NLP. And that's based on the first NLP book that came out in 1975. So 2025 will be 50 years of NLP. So if I am a practitioner, let's say if I'm coaching someone and they're looking for changing a certain behaviors, so as part of the intervention, I will do the intervention with the client. And it is up to them to be disciplined in terms of practicing that. If they don't practice, they're not going to change.
Yeah.
There's no magic. The magic is in self-discipline.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Be Your Own Boss. This episode of the Be Your Own Boss podcast is brought to you by Coach Skills Training Company. Coach Skills is a Dubai-based training company that is dedicated to help individuals and businesses achieve their highest potential through purpose-driven and customized solutions. And thanks to Coach Skills, we have today in the studio, ladies and gentlemen, the #1 NLP trainer in India. And he's just not India's #1, he's a global NLP trainer, Vikram Dhar. And Vikram is a certified NLP trainer coach. I mean, he trains coaches. And it is an absolute honor to have Vikram here. Vikram, welcome to the Be Your Own Boss podcast.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
This is fantastic. Like we always do on the Be Your Own Boss podcast. Let's start with your journey, your story right from the beginning. So if you could just tell us about your parents, your siblings, where were you born? Tell us about your childhood memories.
Wow. So I was born in Srinagar, Kashmir, and so we were there till 1990. And I think I must have been 12 or 13 years old when we left from there. So from there, I grew up in Himachal. Okay. And I've done my engineering from NIT Hamirpur. And then after that, I went to US and did my master's in computer science. My dad is a professor of English. He still teaches as a hobby and passion. My mom was a teacher, and I have one sister. She's a doctor. She is based in New York.
Okay. And you're based in Bangalore now?
I'm based in Bangalore and I'm based in Dubai as well.
Okay.
So 1 month I'm in Dubai, 2 months I prefer to be in Bangalore, India. So that's my schedule for the year.
Got it. And so after your engineering, you went into IT, right? So that was your corporate career. Tell us about that.
I'm a civil engineer.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And so when I was studying, my professor, as a joke, he said, "Vikram, stay away from buildings, they will fall." And I took him very seriously. So I thought, okay, it's time to do masters in computer science because IT industry was pretty much growing around that time. And so I did masters in computer science, came back to India and started my career in IBM as a security analyst. And then I moved into Ernst & Young and I was an IT risk management consultant there for 5 years.
Okay.
After that, I moved back to IBM. And I was a cybersecurity consultant there and eventually grew up to a leadership role in IBM. And this was for 9 more years. So pretty much I just worked in 2 organizations. One is Ernst & Young and one is IBM. So this was my career. And somewhere around 2007, there was a significant shift in my life, I will say. And maybe that was transitioning of moving into something soulful. And it didn't happen overnight. So my dad, he has a library of 3,000 books at home.
Oh, wow.
So he's a very voracious reader. And around that time, by that time, I would say I practically had read nothing from a perspective of, extra reading books. Yes, I was a cybersecurity expert. So definitely some books around cybersecurity I would have read. 2007, I remember my dad said, Robin Sharma has written another book, Greatest Guide 2. And I got curious, why is he talking about Robin Sharma and Greatness Guide, about the book? And maybe, it was a signal from somewhere. And I was luckily standing in front of a bookstore
Okay.
when he called. And I glanced over, and that book caught my attention, Robin Sharma's Greatness Guide.
The book that he mentioned was right there in
Right there in front of me. And
serendipity.
I was
Yeah.
and I was standing with a friend of mine, and he said, "Give me 5 minutes. I want to smoke a cigarette." I said, "Yeah, go ahead." And meanwhile, I started reading that book. And I read one page, two, three, four, five, six. By 10 minutes, I think I read some 20 odd pages.
Wow.
And then I purchased that book. And whole night I finished that book.
Wow.
And so then I read few other books of Robin. And around the same time, I was reading something similar, from Tony Robbins, Unlimited Power and Personal Power. And this is still 2007. And then I sort of became glued to self-development and was reading books around. The theme was still the same, read books around something useful, something that tickles my mind around this. So this was 2007, 2008, I think 2009 as well. And I was also reading few books about business. And if I remember, I specifically got curious about Robert Kiyosaki. And I read all his books.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Cash Flow, and all the other books that followed from there. So I think it was a combination of self-development and entrepreneurship that caught my attention. And then I stumbled across this word NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. This was 2010, in the middle of 2010. So I got curious about what this is. And around this time, there were not too many trainers in India who could teach NLP. So I had not too many options, but just a local trainer available in Bangalore. So I attended a course in 2011. Even though I will say I had a bit of a background already going on by reading some of the other books as well. So the program was sort of condensing the knowledge that I was gaining from last 3-4 years since 2007. And 2011, I just did a formal education around NLP. Around the same time, I attended a coaching program with a Canadian coach who was in India. So I was exploring this as a hobby. And I was still not doing it as a full-time venture. So I will say this was more of a hobby in the beginning.
So can you tell us, for the audience who are for the uninitiated, let's say, who don't know what is NLP, what exactly it is? Because when I was telling my son about this interview that I'm going to have, and I was super excited, I was telling him, I'm going to interview India's #1 NLP trainer. He said, "What is NLP?" I said, "It's Neuro-Linguistic Programming." He said, "Is it about coding?" So let me ask you that child's question. Is NLP about coding?
So since you brought the use word as a coding, so I will say it's coding of our experiences. And when I say coding of our experiences, it's the subjectivity of experience, why people are different. You have a set of experiences in your life. I have my own experiences of my life. And then we filter things in our surroundings using these experiences of ours.
So we are programmed by our experiences in a way to look at things
in a differently. So that's called perceptual filters.
Perceptual, okay.
So part of neuro-linguistic programming, now the program that I'm talking about, the perceptual filters, is called our meta programs.
Okay.
So you will have a different set of programs. I will have my own set of programs. And that's the reason you are different, I am different. Along with that, our own experiences, which will create our belief system, which will create our value system, which will create our how we are designed to behave. We will have our own set of habits and how we are programmed.
How we react
to things. So neuro-linguistic programming was more of a series of experiments which started in 1970 by Richard and John Grinder, Frank Puselic, and all the other co-developers of NLP. Now they call it neuro-linguistic programming. Simple reason, neuro is the 5 senses we have. That's the neurology bit. Linguistics would be how we talk to ourselves and how we talk to others. And programming would be how we program ourselves to create new behaviors, how we program ourselves to let go of our unresourceful beliefs. So that would be the programming bit. Even though it sounds neuro-linguistic programming, it has nothing to do with computers and programming.
Okay, but this is very very interesting. So if I understand this right, neuro linguistic programming is about, like, it's about the five, how our five senses perceive things, and how we can program ourselves to change that perception and change the way we communicate with ourselves and with others.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sounds fascinating.
Yes.
It does. It does. So NLP is a subjective experience. So if I have to give you, there's no single definition of neuro-linguistic programming. So if I have to give you a easiest definition, Judith Delosier, who's the co-developer of NLP, and she's also my mentor, trainer, she will say neuro-linguistic programming is, now let's play and start an adventure of curiosity. How do we change? How do we behave? And what makes us unique?
Were they scientists who started this? You mentioned that they came up with the concept of neuro-linguistic programming. Tell us about that story. Like, there is some
The history?
Yeah, the history of.
Well, as a child, I was always very curious about history. And when I was very curious about history, I used to be fascinated by my dad's dad, about the books that he used to have. And a lot of collection was encyclopedia and history books. So as a child, I was very curious about history and world history. And I read world history, if I remember, by 8th standard.
Oh, okay.
And when I was growing up, the only profession that in that era was engineering or doctor.
Yeah.
So my sister became a doctor. So naturally, I was the one who had to become an engineer in the family.
Yeah.
And I used to tell my dad, I will become a historian. And he said, what will you do? I said, I don't know, something, whatever historians are doing, digging up things, finding out who lived where. He said, no, that's not a useful career to have. It might be your area of interest. We'll see what will happen eventually. I said, well, yeah, okay. So this history thing eventually showed up in the NLP and how I perceived my career as an NLP professional. So having said that, so it tickled me when I was exploring my own journey of being an NLP practitioner, moving into NLP master practitioner, moving eventually into NLP trainer. So if I remember, when I became an NLP trainer, I was more interested in the early development of NLP, who was actually the pioneer who started all of this. So Richard Bandler. Bandler is not a scientist.
Okay.
He was a young, I'll say a 21, 22-year-old when he started this. So he was transcribing some Gestalt tapes, which was a therapeutic intervention methodology. And a publisher had given him some work to transcribe those tapes. And that's how Richard got curious into self-development and therapy and personal change. Then Frank Puselic was his friend, and eventually they collaborated and extended the work. John Grinder was their English professor who had expertise in transformational grammar. So this combination of three people coming together for next few years created what is NLP, along with obviously Robert Dills, Judith Delosier, and other co-developers. So they were the early set of students who were studying psychology in California University of Santa Cruz. And that's how NLP started.
Okay.
And it took at least, I will say, 6 years to sort of create a methodology together. And that's, so next year is 50th year of NLP. So we're celebrating 50th year of NLP. And that's based on the first NLP book that came out in 1975. So 2025 will be 50 years of NLP.
Wow. And you became like interested in NLP. You took your training, the first training that you did in Bangalore after in 2011, right? So what's that like? You become when you get trained, what is that? Then you become a practitioner.
So in the beginning, the first course is called an NLP practitioner, which is the first level. Then you have the NLP master practitioner, which is the second level. Then if you want to train, then you become an NLP trainer. And then eventually, with your expertise and how many training programs you conducted, you become an NLP master trainer. Someone who trains others to become a trainer.
Got it.
So in between, you can also become a coach as well. So if you're an NLP coach, then you become an NLP coach, NLP master coach. which would be that if you have interest in coaching, then you specifically use NLP for coaching.
As an NLP coach, you're helping people, individuals with their, with NLP.
That's correct.
Okay.
So you can use NLP as a methodology to coach.
Uh-huh.
You can use NLP as an intervention, which if you are a trainer, you can use for behavioral training programs.
Right.
And that can be for corporates, that can be used for leadership, that can be used for sales, that can be used for communication, enhancing communication in different organizations as well. So again, it depends on your area of interest. So if you just want to use NLP for training, then that's one pathway that generally people take. And the second pathway would be that if you are a coach, you want to use NLP as a methodology for coach.
How does NLP help an individual, help a business? What magic is NLP?
Well, I wouldn't say magic word here, because there are a lot of people, they will use magic with NLP and NLP, and this is that. Magic is in the self, I will say. Magic is in the application bit. If you want to change, you need to be first convinced that I need to change. I have issues and I want to change, and that's where the magic starts. There are a lot of people who have done NLP programs with me when I was studying, and they were also studying with me. They have done nothing with NLP. And the primary reason being, they thought it's magically going to change their life, which it doesn't. So you have to be patient. You have to continuously learn. You have to apply NLP principles on self. So it all starts from self-development.
Okay.
So there are a lot of coaches, they think that they're going to just learn NLP and magically change. No, it's not going to change. So I always say, use it on self first. Use all the NLP techniques on self. See how it will change you as a person. And then you use NLP methodology with others in a coaching capacity, or you can use it for personal change as well. And in a personal change, there are a lot of psychologists, they use NLP-based interventions. So it has used in therapy as well. It has used in counseling as well. So I would call that personal change work.
Okay.
And coaching would be specifically when you're using it as coaching interventions.
Okay. You've mentioned a couple of times methodology and intervention, right? So NLP intervention. Can you explain that? Like, what is intervention?
So interventions would be NLP tools and techniques.
Okay.
And methodology would be as a whole.
Okay.
An NLP intervention would be, let's say, if somebody wants to do a phobia response change. So there is an NLP intervention which is called fast phobia pattern. So that's a pattern, or it's called a technique. So you use that in a capacity. So if you're an NLP practitioner or a master practitioner, you use the pattern on the client. So client will say, I have phobia of public speaking. I have phobia of snakes. So you use an NLP intervention there. Now, if somebody says, I need to develop a new behavior and I need to change, so there are NLP interventions for behavior changes.
Like, for example, if somebody wants to quit smoking, does NLP help in that?
Yes, so there are few interventions for that. So if I have to use, I can use a swish pattern to change. That was
Switch pattern?
Swish
pattern.
pattern.
Okay.
So that would sort of, since I would use the word programming here, that would program you for a behavior change.
Okay.
Provided you are going to constantly use it. And there are a few more other techniques which you have to do, future pacing, visualizing, and timeline techniques. That would be for the change. So these are all interventions.
Okay.
So you have the content, which is the theoretical bit, and then you have these patterns and techniques, which you can use as an intervention.
So by patterns and techniques, you mean like, specific activities you ask them to do, or you do with the person, and that eventually leads to behavioral change and this, right?
That's correct. So if I am a practitioner, let's say if I'm coaching someone and they're looking for changing a certain behaviors, so as part of the intervention, I will do the intervention with the client, and it is up to them to be disciplined in terms of practicing that. If they don't practice, they're not going to change.
Yeah.
There's no magic. The magic is in self-discipline.
Discipline is the magic.
Discipline is the magic. Persistence is the magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a willingness to do it continuously is the magic.
We've spoken about, like you said, cases like addiction, or somebody wants to change a particular behavior, or a phobia. So these are psychological things. Does it help in physiological things as well? So if like somebody has like a long illness or something, does NLP anyhow play a role in that?
So I just want to be a bit careful in how I answer this question.
Okay.
But there are some people, they will click. Yes, it will change this, it will change that illness, and then there would be some promises, and those things don't happen. So I would say just use NLP with caution in terms of you can change the mindset towards the change, but it's not magically going to cure cancer.
Yeah.
But there are some people, they will claim all those things.
Yeah.
So there is enough evidence, I would say, or there is enough stories which I would have heard that, somebody will say, NLP will help you with this, NLP will change you that, and there is magic in this. No. There are limitations.
Yeah.
There are doctors for something, there are medications for something. So it will be useful to do those. NLP can be a support in terms of if you want to upgrade your belief around, can I change? Can I heal myself? So yes, you can do a belief change pattern around that, but that doesn't mean that you will just heal something. There will be medical interventions required, obviously.
Right. So it's, when we say like mind over body and things like that, right? So NLP is all about the mind, right? Changing the mind in this one. How does it help in a business environment? Because it's individual, we understand, at a personal level, it's more of personal. Does it help in business?
Well, NLP is a useful methodology for everything. If you want to use it for business, let's say if I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, and I use NLP for myself first. Do I have the belief system to back that I can do it? Do I have the belief system to change certain elements with respect to myself? Am I open to change certain things that don't work for me? So then I'm using NLP for self. Now, if I'm a business owner, the key skills would be communication with my clients. Am I able to understand them better? So am I able to understand what the client needs are? So a lot of NLP, which is the first generation of NLP, is mostly cognitive, which is about how do you talk to yourself and how you're talking to others. The second generation of NLP is more of a somatic work. And the general wordings which gets used is, let's bring body back to us. That's the somatic NLP so it's not only about the mind is cognition, and you have the body as well. Okay. So a lot of focus in the second generation of NLP was, how do you bring mind and body together? And there is a presupposition which is mind and body are part of the same system. So if you do something cognitively, you will experience a change in the body. If you do something somatic, you will experience a change in your cognition as well. So
Yeah.
it's about, if I'm standing and presenting, it's not only cognition, my body is also there. So which means if my body is not calm, I'm not going to be calm.
Yeah.
So it's all about the mind and body as an experience.
So when you're like on the stage, for example, your body language determines your mindset in a way, right? It kind of changes. And if you're and people say that if you're scared, then use a specific body language that will change the way you think.
Yes. So if you're scared, the external symptoms will be appearing in the body. If I'm scared, yes, I'm starting it from here, but it's going to be visible in my somatic language, how I'm presenting.
Yeah.
If I'm standing on the, let's say, and delivering something from the stage,
Yeah.
and if I'm shivering, then that's visibly that there are fear-based responses there. And there are NLP interventions for that as well.
Okay. You're a global NLP trainer, right? You've trained NLP coaches in so many countries, so many different cultures. With different countries, there are different cultures. And how is NLP perceived and received in different cultures?
Good question. Great question. So the first generation of NLP trainers were obviously Americans, because Richard started it. And in 70s and 80s, I will say still all the big leaders, big names of NLP were US based. 1980s, I will say some of the NLP trainers were from UK. And I think a couple of them were from Australia as well. The early trainers, obviously English speaking was primarily required to learn NLP in the beginning. So 90s is the time when it started to move from US to different parts of the world. And I will still say that in around GCC, Middle East, Eastern European countries, Southeast Asian countries, India, I don't think so there was enough NLP in 90s in those countries. Eventually it came after 30, 35 years, I will say. And with the technology, with global penetration in terms of information easily available, then the curiosity in this part of the world, in Dubai and in India also started. And then now you have trainers available locally in these parts of the world as well.
Also in the local languages,
In local languages as well. So you will have NLP programs in Portuguese, in Brazil.
Okay.
You will have NLP training in Spanish in South American countries.
Yeah.
Eastern European countries will have their own NLP trainers. Japan is a big NLP market. China is a big NLP market. So they will do it in Chinese and Japanese. India, obviously, you'll have English as the primary business language. Hence, it's English is the language to do it in India.
Do NLP trainings happen in Hindi as well in India?
Yes.
Okay.
I would not like to comment on the quality of trainers and the trainings.
Yeah. When NLP is introduced in a culture for the first time, right? How is it perceived and how is it like in the beginning? I use the word magic and like, this is something that I've heard on this one. There are mystical things about it. Is it magic, mystic, all these things. Somewhere that perception is there, right? So
it is. And having perceptions is being human. And that's the beauty of NLP. NLP will have different perceptions within NLP as well. And there would be perceptions about the NLP as well. So as an NLPer, there are people, they don't like NLP. And it's okay. You don't have to like NLP to believe in it. And if I have to look at from a coaching perspective, coaching industry perspective, industry about behavioral change, NLP is there from last 50 years. Pretty much the oldest in terms of a methodology of change and methodology of coaching.
Yeah. And very organized, right? Like NLP looks, it's like globally, it's a very structured program. You've used so many like terms which are, you can do this particular technique or that particular technique. There are certain tools and techniques which are in NLP.
So Richard has his own way of doing NLP. John Grinder has his own way of doing NLP. Judith Delosier, Robert Dilts, they have their own way of doing it. So that's the beauty of NLP as well. So since NLP started, so it's a model about the models. So anything which works and you want to model excellence, you can bring it into NLP. Let's say if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm doing a research around mindset, which Robert Dilts did for so many years. And his work primarily started off as NLP. He's the co-developer of NLP. And later on, he did a lot of consulting work with entrepreneurs and he studied entrepreneurs and out came mindset maps.
Mindset maps. Okay.
So a lot of activities which happen in the mindset maps, you will find a lot of overlap with his NLP work. Similarly, he has other ventures as well. And the backend is always NLP, in my opinion. There are a lot of other trainers as well. I wouldn't want to name them, but their work is sort of NLP, but they're just given it a different name.
Yeah.
And they copyrighted the names, they've copyrighted the brand, but the base is NLP.
Yeah.
And they would have certain reasons not to say that this is.
Yeah, they want to call it like that.
They just have to call it something else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, if someone comes up with a concept or a particular methodology, right? And then, it's so difficult to just patent the whole thing. Somebody can just copy and replicate and come up with different names, or someone can even say that this is already there in my, I'm older than this. I've got something already that is, that it just like gets a bit contradictory then.
So NLP is not trademarked. So it never was.
Okay.
Hence, it is open to use, which means it is open to any different sort of a flavor as well. It has its good things and it has its bad things as well because of that. Since it is not trademarked, people will say NLP and something else. or law of attraction or NLP. So then it starts to go into a different direction. And when I say different direction than the original developers created. Now, as a person looking for an NLP course, you will not know all these things. So somebody who's in the field, they will know all these things. So even when I started, I had no idea about all of that. So for me, NLP was whatever my trainer told me. And thankfully, he was a decent trainer. And then I had to find out, with my curiosity of being a sort of a history-liking student, I figured out, where are the real developers of NLP? Where are the real co-founders of NLP? And eventually, over the years, I did courses with all of them to find what is the best version out of all the founders and developers and what works for me.
Wow. So you got trained from the founders of NLP?
I got trained from the founders, from the co-developers of NLP. I work very closely with Judy Delosier, and I work very closely with Robert Dilts.
Wow. On that note, Vikram, let's take a short break here. And after the break, we'll continue the conversation. And I want to learn more about NLP. So stay tuned. This was part 1 of our conversation with Vikram Dhar, the NLP trainer, global NLP trainer. And this episode of the Be Your Own Boss podcast was brought to you by Coach Skills Training Company, the company that is dedicated to helping individuals and businesses thrive with passion towards success and get to achieve their highest potential. So stay tuned, and the rest of the conversation will continue in part 2.
Interacting with 65 plus nationalities itself is learning NLP again. Each nationality is different. They bring their own belief. They bring their own value system. So it's been a great learning experience. Health of the brain matters. When I say health of the brain matters, is there enough blood going into your brain? And that's based on what is the type of food that you eat. Is your food creating inflammation in your body? Is your food creating inflammation in your brain? When you do meditation, meditation improves the quality of your brain in terms of the health. It reduces the stress level. It gives a baseline to the brain's chemicals, how you operate. Food is nourishment. Food is a fuel for the body. And what is food? And you specify that, and that only is food for you. Burger is not food for me. French fries is not food for me. Pizza is definitely not food for me. There was no neuroscience 50 years back. So neuroscience is something which is upcoming and is always going to be upcoming. Why? Because we'll have more access to our brain now. We will have more access to information about our brain.